The recent presidential election serves as a mirror to some of the deeper, unresolved tensions that have shaped American politics over the past decade. For many, this election wasn't just about choosing between two candidates, but about addressing a systemic disconnect between political leadership and the everyday struggles of 90% of Americans. As we unpack what went wrong, or right depending on your perspective, there's a pressing need to understand not just the electoral outcome, but the broader forces at play. Over the last 8 years, I've noticed a growing rift between personal belief and objective fact in our political conversations. People are passionate, yes, but often that passion supersedes a critical examination of the underlying truths. Many Democrats, particularly those in positions of relative privilege, seem to operate under the assumption that Americans are deeply invested in higher-tier political concerns. The reality is, though, that for a significant segment of the population, the primary focus remains on daily survival, putting food on the table, paying rent, and accessing health care. This gap in understanding can be jarring and at times infuriating. This election laid bare the stark irony within the Democratic Party's internal dynamics. Instead of fostering constructive critique and meaningful progress, Democrats have too often turned on their own progressive wing. Progressives have consistently advocated for policies like universal health care and a livable minimum wage, policies that could alleviate the struggles of millions of Americans. Yet rather than being celebrated, they are frequently sidelined or painted as divisive. The party's emphasis on unity sometimes feels hollow, more about maintaining a facade of strength than genuinely addressing the roots of discontent. The Republicans, on the other hand, have skillfully leveraged cultural wedge issues to mobilize their base. Whether it's transgender rights or debates over race and policing, these topics have been politicized in ways that evoke visceral reactions. Meanwhile, Democrats have found themselves arrogantly defending positions that don't always align with the perspectives of swing voters. The backlash isn't always rooted in bigotry. Sometimes it comes from a place of economic anxiety, an unshakable fear that change will come at a cost they can't afford. For many voters, Trump's appeal lies not in his divisive rhetoric, but in his promises, no matter how hollow, to address their material needs. There's a sentiment among a notable fraction of Trump supporters that the Democrats have become out of touch, more focused on social issues than on practical, everyday economic concerns. And even when Democrats have rolled out policies to address these issues, they often feel like half measures, gestures designed to tick boxes rather than enact substantial transformative change. It's crucial to understand the broader economic and institutional frustrations that shape this election. In a nation where a staggering percentage of people live paycheck to paycheck, discussions about abortion rights or judicial appointments can feel like a privilege. I've reflected deeply on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a reminder of how disconnected we can become from the struggles of those still grappling with the lower tiers of the pyramid: food, shelter, basic health. This isn't to say higher-order political issues are unimportant, but expecting people to care about them when their daily survival is at stake speaks to a profound misunderstanding of human motivation. The criticism of Democrats isn't just about policy. It's also about campaign strategy and institutional inertia. The party's consistent reliance on big donor money undermines its credibility with working-class voters who feel betrayed. Even the much-celebrated policies of the last administration often fell short, perceived as symbolic gestures rather than meaningful change. How do we convince someone to vote blue when their reality remains one of economic precarity, when they can't see how voting Democratic will materially improve their situation? This election should be a wake-up call, a moment of serious introspection for Democrats. Progressives warned years ago that loyalty was conditional and that their patience wasn't endless. They wanted a bolder, more compassionate vision, one that prioritized economic justice and rejected corporate influence. Yet here we are, facing the same critiques, the same disappointments. The road ahead demands that Democrats recommit to grassroots democracy, address economic inequality with vigor, and disentangle themselves from corporate ties. Because without a real people-first approach, the erosion of trust will only deepen, making every subsequent election an uphill battle. Ultimately, we must all reflect on our beliefs and ask hard questions. Are we pushing for change that truly benefits the majority? Or are we defending a status quo that keeps us comfortable? This election isn't just a reflection of the candidates, it's a reflection of us, our values, and how we respond to the growing calls for meaningful, lasting reform. Credits. Narration by Sheffy, i.e. Sheriffy AI. Script by a Sheriffy P.